The highest-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives is honoring Georgia Congressman David Scott, who passed away Wednesday. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries released a statement saying, in part, quote, he will be deeply missed by his constituents and his colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman Scott represented Georgia's 13th congressional district since 2003. It includes portions of Clayton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Henry, Newton, and Rockdale counties. Scott was 80 years old with a political career that spanned more than 5 decades. He was first elected to the state house in the 70s. Former UN Ambassador Andrew Young reflected on his relationship with the man who reached huge political heights.
He was a good congressman, and everybody in Washington respected him because he wasn't flashy. He was steady, but if he gave you his word, you could count on it.
Congressman Scott's death now means Governor Kemp will have to call a special election to fill out the rest of his term. We're working to find out when that election will take place. Also, because of the closeness of his death to the upcoming primary, Congressman Scott's name will remain on the ballot. Votes cast for him will not count.